Imagine this. Before you were born, your soul made a vow. It looked at your future body, this soft, complex, vulnerable being, and quietly promised, I will take care of you. That sacred contract was made in silence. No witnesses, no papers. Just a deep, unseen commitment to guard, to guide, to stay. But something happened between that moment and now. Somewhere along the path of becoming, that promise was pushed aside, not out of cruelty but forgetfulness, not by rebellion, but by adaptation. The child who arrived in this world full of instinct and light quickly learned that love could be conditional. Approval had rules. Being too loud, too honest, too soft, too much often led to rejection, not safety. So instead of protecting that inner self, we learned to negotiate with the outside world. We became likable, polite, productive, quiet. And in doing so, we drifted further from the one we were meant to care for. It's subtle, this betrayal. It doesn't come all at once. It looks like overcommitting, like staying in rooms that drain us, like silencing discomfort to keep the peace. Years pass. The calendar fills. We succeed by every standard that was handed to us. Yet somewhere beneath the surface, a dull ache begins to grow. The sense that someone inside us has been waiting far too long. This isn't self-hatred, it's neglect. And the cost is higher than we ever imagined. That neglected self doesn't scream it withdraws. It loses its appetite. It stops dreaming. It forgets how to ask for tenderness. And eventually, it fades behind the mask we wear so well. We call it burnout, disconnection, numbness. But what we're really experiencing is grief. Grief for the parts of us we've long abandoned. No one else was assigned this role, not your partner, not your friends, not even the kindest therapist. The job of caring for your soul, holding it with presence, protection, and patience, has always belonged to you. And that doesn't require perfection. It requires remembering, returning, reclaiming the promise that was made long before any wound or expectation ever touched you. To ask each morning, not what should I do, but what does my human need from me today? That shift changes everything. No longer at war with yourself. No longer outsourcing your worth. No longer waiting to be rescued. This is where self-love begins, not with a feeling, but with a vow you decide to keep. The phrase, love yourself, is easy to say and hard to understand. It's repeated everywhere, in books, on social media, even in therapy. But rarely is it explained in a way that reflects the depth of what it actually means. For many, self-love is imagined as a feeling, a warm, positive emotion, like looking in the mirror and smiling back. But that version is incomplete. Love, in its truest form, is not a mood. It's not something that appears when you feel good enough. It's a function, a posture, a daily choice. If a child wakes up crying at 3 a.m., a loving parent doesn't wait to feel affection before comforting them. They respond not because of emotion, but because of responsibility. The same principle applies to self-love. It's not about liking who you are today. It's about showing up for yourself anyway. There are mornings when the inner critic is louder than any affirmation. Moments when shame wraps itself tightly around the body. Times when self-worth feels like a distant language you no longer understand. Even then, especially then, love must remain an act. You eat when your body is hungry, not when you deserve it. You rest when the soul is weary, not just when everything is done. You speak kindly to yourself, not as a reward, but as a practice. Erich Fromm once wrote, "Love is an act of will. The intention and action of love is more important than the feeling of love." He was right. We do not wait to feel love before offering it. We love, and in time, the feeling often follows. Unfortunately, many people never learn this. They wait for affection to appear naturally, and when it doesn't, they assume it means something is wrong. But emptiness isn't evidence of failure. Often, it's the absence of consistent care. Modern culture teaches performance over presence. We applaud self-sacrifice, busyness, perfection, but rarely ask how someone is actually treating themselves in private. Behind many successful people is a neglected inner world. They accomplish much, yet live in quiet self-rejection. Loving yourself means choosing to no longer be the one who abandons you. That doesn't mean indulgence. It means protection. Boundaries that keep your energy safe. Honesty that cuts through self-deception. Compassion that doesn't excuse harm, but refuses to use punishment as a path to growth. Like parenting, this care is imperfect. There will be days of exhaustion, frustration, resistance. But the task remains the same: to continue returning, to continue listening, to continue showing up even when it would be easier to ignore yourself altogether. You don't need to love how you look or what you've done to begin this work. You only need to take custody of your life. No one else is coming to live it for you. No one else knows the nuance of your pain, the subtlety of your needs, the shape of your dreams. Only you are qualified to offer that kind of care. So let it be simple and let it be steady. The voice in your head may not always be kind, but your actions can be. The mirror may not offer comfort, but your choices can. The world may not recognize your worth, but you can learn to honor it moment by moment. That is love. Not dramatic, not grand, but deliberate, quiet, undeniably real. Healing doesn't begin with insight. It begins with ownership. Not of what happened to you, but of what happens next. Many of us walk through adulthood waiting for someone to finally see us, to choose us without conditions, to give what was never consistently given: safety, presence, understanding. But the longer we wait, the more we suffer. Because the truth is painfully simple. No one is coming to do that for you. Not the way you truly need. This is the turning point. When you stop outsourcing your emotional care, when you stop looking for a parent in your partner, a savior in your friendships, or worth in the eyes of strangers, when you begin to reparent yourself, That word reparenting may sound clinical, but the process is intimate, raw, and sacred. It means recognizing the parts of you that were never fully held and choosing to hold them now. The anxious child who felt like a burden. The teenager who had to grow up too fast. The adult who still doesn't know how to ask for what they need. These inner selves live in your nervous system. They don't age out. They don't disappear with time. They resurface through reaction, sensitivity, exhaustion, all the places where logic fails and emotion takes over. To reparent is to meet those moments with presence instead of judgment. Not fixing attending, not dismissing listening. Ask yourself, what would it look like to truly be on your own side? Not just in theory, but in practice. It might look like leaving environments that mirror old wounds, or refusing to apologize for your needs, or learning to say, I see you, I hear you, and I'm not going anywhere, to yourself. Most of us learned love through conditions. Be helpful, be good, be quiet, be strong. So when we break down, fall apart, or feel lost, the shame comes fast, as if pain invalidates us, as if weakness makes us unworthy. But self-trust isn't built in strength. It's built in the moments you choose not to abandon yourself when you're at your worst. Think of someone who matters to you. Would you only care for them when they're cheerful, productive, perfect? Of course not. Then why should your care for yourself be any different? This is what it means to take full custody of your inner world. Not just the bright, confident parts, but the frightened ones, the parts that still feel 10 years old, the parts that only ask, will you stay with me this time? Reparenting is not about rewinding the past. It's about becoming the guardian you always needed and still need, not a critic, not a drill sergeant, a steady, compassionate witness, a firm but loving protector. Over time, the nervous system begins to soften, not because the world is suddenly safe, but because you are. That is what changes your life. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of someone who finally says, I've got you, and means it. No ceremony marks a moment when self-betrayal ends. There's no applause when you finally choose yourself not as a performance, but as a quiet vow. No one notices when you walk away from roles that once defined you, only to return to the stillness inside. Yet that choice becomes the most sacred turning point of your life. Not a dramatic rebirth, more like a slow reintroduction, a whisper, I remember you. What began as survival eventually shifts into devotion. You stop fixing yourself like a problem and start tending to yourself like something living. The relationship deepens, not because you're perfect, but because you're present. Peace in this stage takes on a different shape. It isn't constant comfort or a mind free from doubt. More often, it's the gentle refusal to abandon yourself, even when the noise is loud or the days feel heavy. It's the moment you catch your inner critic mid-sentence and choose not to believe it. Silence becomes less threatening, more nourishing. You find beauty in the spaces you once tried to fill. Even the simplest rituals, preparing food, stepping outside, breathing, begin to feel like acts of reverence. This is no longer about self-improvement. The obsession with better fades. What matters more is truth, alignment, and living in integrity with who you've become. Old measures of success lose their grip. The need to prove, to chase, to please gradually dissolves. In its place, a quiet satisfaction grows. Not the kind you post, the kind that lives in your bones. Trust, once so fragile, begins to root. Not in others, but in yourself. Decisions feel lighter because they don't come from fear. You no longer ask, will this make me enough? The better question becomes, is this honest? Some connections will fade not from anger, but evolution. When the old self no longer shows up, the old dynamics fall away. Let them. What remains is real. Loneliness still visits, but it no longer feels like emptiness. It becomes space, a clearing, room for something sacred to arrive. Being with yourself, fully without distraction, justification, or apology, becomes a form of prayer. No need to seek wholeness in someone else when you've remembered your own. This journey doesn't end. There's no final chapter where everything is resolved and nothing hurts. But there is a homecoming, a returning to the one who never left, the one you forgot to care for, the one who stayed through every disappointment, mistake, and heartbreak, waiting to be chosen. Not once, daily, moment by moment. Loving yourself means living inside that sacred choice, not loudly, not perfectly, but truthfully. You are your human. No one else can play that role. And now, finally, you're ready to keep the vow.